Mr. Pascoe, thank you very much for joining us. Firstly, could you tell us about the ICMA, because some of us may not be familiar with that. Yeah, especially how about the operation or maybe the cooperation with China, and what are your priorities in the near future?
So thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. So ICMA is the leading trade association in fixed income and repo markets internationally. And we have a very large membership of over 620 organizations from 68 jurisdictions. So we're truly international. But we do have a very strong presence in Asia, where we have a large and growing membership who we work with on a number of things. Our principal areas of focus are standard setting, so ensuring market practice is well served, and also working with our members on regulatory advocacy when there are regulations coming that need our support to work with the authorities. And we're active across all areas of fixed income and repo, but we focus also very intensively on sustainable finance, where we are the Secretariat for the International Green Bond and Sustainability Principles, and also increasingly digitalization and technology is a key area of our activities. Now in China in particular, I think again, we have a long-standing membership here. We've been doing work in the China market for a long time. And again, we focus on key issues of market development, supporting important engagement initiatives such as the connectivity with Hong Kong to help to boost international investor participation here. We've been very active in terms of helping to support the repo market development. Repo is a very important fundamental area of financial financing and liquidity provision, and we see areas where the Chinese market can align more with international standards, which will boost international participation and be very helpful, I think, for broadening the overall depth of the market. Sustainable finance in China as well is clearly a huge topic. China has become a very big player in the global ESG market. And we there work with our members and stakeholders to try to promote harmonization and cohesion with international standards.
My next question is about the capital environment, because this year the FED is very likely to cut their interest rates, but the geopolitical environment is still very complex. So how will the bond insurance go this year?
Internationally or domestically?
Internationally.
Yeah, the year's seen a very strong start in the international markets. I think market conditions for bond issuance is currently very strong. While rates are a little bit higher, I think, than most people would like to see, we're expecting rates to come down, but at a reasonably smooth pace. And that sets a very good environment, I think, for demand from the investor side. We've seen very, very strong inflows into funds in terms of retail money flowing into funds and obviously institutional participants also, and that's helped to create very, very strong demand for new issuance. So we've seen issuers take a strong advantage of the issuance conditions across the different asset classes. We've also seen a compression in spreads and corporate spreads against US Treasuries, and similar kind of market situation in Europe. So overall market conditions internationally are very strong for issuance, notwithstanding the fact that rates are a little bit higher, I think, than people would like. That doesn't mean to say that we can be complacent. I think some geopolitical issues are still a concern. There's obviously the potential for inflation to come back and stay higher. And at the same time, this year we've got a large number of elections, so politics will likely play a role, perhaps in leading to higher market uncertainty as we get further into the year.
Then how about the bond market in China? Is it real different from the other countries?
Yeah, well, I think the interest rate cycle here is obviously at a very, very different point. Rates are lower in China than they are internationally. That's had the impact really of making perhaps investment into China from an international investor's perspective less attractive because the rates are lower. But at the same time, what it has done is create a very strong environment for borrowers. So the market currently is quite challenging for many Chinese issuers to issue in the international markets. And at the same time, we're seeing a healthy growth in the panda bond market, supporting obviously the funding requirements in Renminbi of international bond issuers.
And data here is about the bond insurance in China totaled $10 trillion in last year.
Yeah.
It is up 14.8% year on year.
Yeah.
So therefore, what factors are driving this trend? And internationally, what kind of level of this performance?
So yes, I think we did see quite a significant increase in total volumes in the onshore bond markets last year. I think that's probably a combination of factors. Firstly, the government continues to issue treasury bills and bonds in significant size. We do obviously also see funding need from the current ongoing funding need from the local government funding vehicles. And also, as I perhaps mentioned earlier, some of the funding that in the past might have been conducted through issuing bonds in the offshore market is now looking more specifically at onshore opportunities because it's a better funding environment.
Now that China has become the second largest bond in the world, according to the data that I know, so how do you comment on the China's bond development during these years?
Yeah. Well, I think, China is now the second largest bond market in the world, and I think that's a remarkable situation. In modern history, Chinese government only started to issue government bonds around 40 years ago. So that's from a standing start, now the second largest bond market in the world. So that change has been remarkable. That said, clearly the market hasn't necessarily evolved in the smoothest of ways. There are a number of challenges, I think, that the domestic market still faces. The relative lack of liquidity, the investor base is still very heavily dependent on the banks. We see a lack perhaps of international market participation as well that we would like to promote. And the environment is quite complex also. The regulatory environment is quite fragmented, as is the market structure. So while the development and the progress has been tremendous, I think there's a lot of room still for further improvement.
We all know that the capital market unit are opening up, but on the other hand, there is the security problem. So how do you see the further opening up of China's bond market?
So I think, as I mentioned before, some of the reforms that have been put in place are very strong, but we do think there's room for further improvement. We have seen recently promotion of further activity from international players in the domestic repo market, and we think that's a very important process to continue to build upon. Building the connectivity is key. Hong Kong is really the leading financial center for connection into China. We clearly would like to see further usage and leverage of that role to boost players coming into the market. And I think also greater harmonization of standards and cohesion back to the sustainable finance subject should increase the number of international investors who will be keen to look at domestic Chinese bonds when they're looking to invest in sustainable product as well.
Let's talk something about the green bond that you have mentioned. How do you see the opportunities of the green bonds, especially in China, and what kind of aspects need to be improved? Maybe the institutional construction or maybe the market supervision, according to your observation.
So sustainable finance is an incredibly important subject for us to deal with right now. And the market is already very large in size and has matured significantly over the last few years. China has been a major player as well in that process of issuance of green and sustainably labeled products. For further, genuine market progress, I think it's important to continue to work on standards, high standards with integrity, aspirational standards, but also coming back to the point around harmonization and standardization and cohesion. It's very important, I think, that investors and issuers understand frameworks and they're able to clearly be able to align with very, very clear guidelines and international standards. So I think the more progress we can see on harmonization will certainly help to promote the green bond and sustainability bond universe to a much greater degree. We were very encouraged in 2022 that the China green bond standards aligned with the ICMA international green bond standards. I think that was a very, very positive signal. Other positive initiatives have been taken, such as the intention to align with ISSB reporting standards, for example, and also the work that's been done with other jurisdictions, such as ASEAN and the European Union, on a common ground taxonomy, which will look to create equivalence and alignment on some of the activities and the catalogue of activities that can be considered to be sustainable activities. No, well, as mentioned, I think, the Chinese market is already very large in size and green bond issuance, and the potential for further growth is significant. Alignment, as I said, and harmonization with international standards is a critical element to this. I touched on a number of features before. But also the theme of transition finance is something that's very, very important. Transition to help to support hard to abate industries to meet climate goals going forward. We need to be in a position to put together transition plans that can work with financing instruments to help some of these industries and companies move to transition their businesses to a cleaner and carbon neutral environment. The one thing as well, I think that's very important in terms of challenges is the issue of greenwashing. I think there's been, a lot of concerns about some of the credibility of instruments onshore here in China, but internationally as well, in terms of the aspirations or the transparency of issuers when they've been issuing these products. So I think helping to put clearer frameworks around greenwashing, make sure that regulation and market practice is aligned to make sure that we're able to control and eradicate greenwashing to the greatest extent possible.
Actually, some people would worry about the capital return of the green bonds. What's your comment on this?
I think, we do sometimes see a small benefit for issuers by issuing green bonds in terms of a lower spread or a lower rate. I think, that at the same time, investors should see that as a price to pay for, the longer term benefits of looking at that credit. I think if a corporate has a very clear plan in the medium to long term as to how they will address their transition requirements or their investing for the future and which will make their business more efficient and hopefully cheaper, then that's a good opportunity, I think, for investors to get involved in those entities early so they can benefit from the long-term greater efficiencies and better business that those entities will likely generate.
Could you share a little bit more how do you see the market development, maybe the green bond market or maybe the other bond market of GBA?
I think the GBA has, again, huge potential. It's probably one of the biggest, economic sub-regions within China, connecting so many energetic and innovative cities and benefiting also from that connectivity with Hong Kong as a financial hub. So I think there'll be a lot of potential, for the GBA as a region to play a greater role in the financial markets in China as we look ahead. Well, I think we have seen some innovations in China, right? Specifically focused on financing the tech industry and utilizing the bond market to do so. So I think to the extent that, the right standards can be developed, the credit culture can be developed, the processes to help to foster some of those financing channels using the bond market directly to help to promote the technology space would be a very, welcome addition, I think, to what's already a growing and broadening bond market.
Okay, that's all about my question. Thank you again. Thank you, Mr. Pascoe. Thank you.